something.
Hi. Yeah. Yeah. I think everyone can hear me.
Okay.
You guys will, the speaker will be standing on the red carpet the whole time, right?
No. They'll be walking sometimes.
Around.
Yeah, but the thing is, we should not advise them to move a little bit more forward because if just now you move forward, you'll be out of the light. So the spot you like the dark. Yeah, see that one? That one you're already out. Okay. Okay. Yeah, that see? The one that you just went through right now, you'll be in the
I put
shadow.
a new version. So it's the, yeah. No problem.
Yeah. So just a little bit, a foot just outside of the red carpet.
Did everybody go through their slides to see that they were correct?
Oh, that's good.
Aiden?
No, because like it flipped past me so fast I couldn't really just
Go up with Stella now and make sure.
not to move more than
First roll, then I can consider
What if we just change the light a bit?
Two sides. You know, it's not 45 degrees. This one is the best.
Do we need to change the light a little bit? Because I would like them to be able to step forward because that's...
Yeah.
Yeah, that one is okay. Yeah.
Yeah. That,
Yeah, that one you're already in the shadow.
Can we just make the light a little bit bigger?
刘兰，你能给那个就是现在那灯，再让它那个圆圈儿给底下那范围再大一点吗？就现在这灯。现在就是往后的时候，用力。It's not on.
Bro, I need your help. Do you have?
Oh, you mean we're not going to be
对他现在站的那地儿吧，就有点那个阴影了。啊？就平了。哦，就打平了。就是现在它稍微往后就变成阴影。那屏幕就不行了吗？只能往前。
He did what Eric.
那暂时先这样。
Power is wrong. No, I don't have access for that website. Yeah, okay. That's the reason why last time. Carl, 你那个啥，你能在那个 livestream 那个做 redirect 吗？这样手为手，然后上 YouTube。
Why don't we have sound?
Just muting over there.
Into my mind now go right back to the 1900s and IST, those very early.
So MC will share this microphone with Eric, right?
Okay.
Yeah, so in total 4.
Okay.
Three headsets.
Three headsets, one mic.
And here's a question. When they're rigged up, are they on? So like if they were to breathe into the microphone, even though they're not speaking,
Can it be heard?
can it be heard?
I don't think because there's a controller over there. Okay. They can only you usually we'll just switch one microphone on at the same time.
How do you know which one is on?
There are signals
and live, and they'll be able to watch from there. Just a notice. TSEN live. Live. Very happy to have you. Please give our parents a warm welcome. As many of you know, WAB beloved founding teacher and employee Greg McIsaac, known to many of us as Fella, passed away last year in September after bravely battling a rare type of cancer. An embodiment of WAB's spirit, he influenced the lives of many teachers and students like myself and was known for his incredible storytelling ability. As a tribute to him and the legacy he has left on our WAB community, this year's TEDx conference is held in his memory. We will start off our conference by watching a video from a very good friend of Mr. Mack, Dr. Jane Goodall.
I think I'm not alone in finding it almost impossible to believe that Greg is no longer with us. He was one of the most vital and alive people I've ever known, and he spread joy and fun wherever he went. The memories that come flooding into my mind now go right back to the 1900s and IST, those very early Roots and Shoots days when we had football matches and art competitions at IST that Greg helped to organize. Then came his departure. He told me he was going to China and would miss me, and I would simply have to visit him. He was going to help Michael Crook start up a new international school in Beijing. That's WAB. I promised I'd go, but only if he started Roots and Shoots in WAB and a local Chinese school. And by Jove, he did. Big problem for me. China seemed like the end of the world back then. How would I find money to go to the end of the world? But what's known now as Jane Magic was already at work. I was invited to give a talk in Shanghai at a meeting of the International Schools of Asia. And Greg was there, of course. We flew together to Beijing. How different China was back then. There were all those bicycles on the road, including the ones with sidecars for the wife, the clean air, the old China. It was a wonderful visit that he and Michael arranged for me. We visited several schools, met one of the very few environmental groups, Friends of Nature, started by Liang Konji, and went to the deer park and met Guo Gang. Little did we know that it would lead to annual visits for the next few years, and then visits every 2 years. So many visits, they're blurred together in my memory. But the second visit remains clear. We received a summons from the Deputy Minister of the Environment. We had to desperately rearrange my schedule. There were 4 in our group, including Greg and Michael. We were ushered into a formal meeting room and sat in a row, waiting. We'd been told the minister was very busy, but could spare us 10 minutes. I remember sitting there for at least 10 minutes, with the Chinese TV cameras facing us, before the minister even arrived. Finally, he came, and we all sat in a long, stiff row. Except for Greg, in no time, he was over there with the Chinese press. I took a big risk by greeting the minister as a female chimp would greet a male. And knowing I was breaking all protocol, but desperate to break the ice, I took his arm, which went rigid in surprise, and pulled it so that his hand patted my head. Then I leaned over and made small greeting sounds in his neck. Silence. Drat, I thought, I'd blown it. But after what seemed ages, probably just a few seconds, he started to laugh and laugh, and the cameras rolled, and Greg filmed it all. Our 10-minute meeting lasted almost an hour. And because of that meeting, Greg and Michael were able to introduce Roots and Shoots into more and more Chinese schools. So many adventures, and always Greg was there with his video camera. I always stayed in his apartment in Beijing. We had so many evening meetings at the JGI board there, and there were evenings we had together, Greg with his beer and me with my whiskey, and he talked to me of his passion, ice hockey, and his love of mooses. I took to taking him a moose ornament every time I visited, and the collection of silly mooses grew in his cabinet. Then there was a time when Greg dropped me off at the wrong terminal for my flight to the UK. When he rushed back to tell me I'd already gone through security, who but Greg could have somehow got permission for me to come back through security? He'd held up one of the buses to the correct terminal, and there he persuaded them to let me check in for my flight, even though check-in was officially closed. With anyone else, I would have missed the flight. He was some amazing man, that fella. He shared himself endlessly, giving so much to so many. I feel sure he's around now, listening to the memories of all the people who loved him so much everywhere. To the ex-students and the students who are so grateful for his wisdom. So here's to you, Greg. I hope there are a lot of mooses up there with you. I'm sending lots of love and hugs. Know that you're missed, and your memory will live on in Tanzania, China, and your homeland of Canada. Cheers. I think I'm not alone in finding it almost...
To commemorate Mr. Mack's passion for TEDx and his incredible storytelling ability, this year's TEDx speeches are dedicated to our own student stories, with topics ranging from coding to donut economics to racial representation in media. Our students have dedicated the past few months to perfecting their speeches to make them appealing for their audience, so please give them your full attention while they are speaking. Also, please turn off your phones to avoid distractions and pretend like this is a holiday, because we're probably not getting one for a while. Without further ado, please welcome our first speaker of the event, J.O. Johnson, who will be speaking about a new rule that he's come up with himself regarding hobbies.
I want everybody here to try imagining something with me. Imagine two teenagers, Mo and Joe. They were born with the same resources and opportunities, near exact copies of each other, and were raised in very similar manners. As young children, they were basically the same person. But as teens, their stories split. Joe's hobbies as a teen included skateboarding with his friends, programming, and cooking, while Mo's hobbies included watching TV, going on social media, and gaming. Joe wanted to become a well-rounded adult who lived a full, happy life, always content with where he was. And Mo, while equally happy as Joe as a teen, went on a downward spiral from there. He was always looking for a job and always hoping for a better life with no way to get there. Now, this story of Mo and Joe is completely fake. It never happened. But it is based around one indisputable truth. The hobbies you have as a teen can make or break your life in the future. The big question is, which hobbies are better for your future and which are not? What about Joe's teenage hobbies allowed him to succeed where Mo failed? I, J.O., a 13-year-old and official teen since June of last year, believe I have an answer to that question. I have since condensed my thinking into a special rule. I call it the 3 hobbies rule for teens. This all started a while ago with my discovery of the original 3 hobbies rule. Try and true, it's been around for quite a while. A search of the 3 hobbies rule on the internet will get hundreds of results, all with the same thing, saying that everybody needs to have one hobby to make them money, one hobby to keep them fit, and one hobby to keep them creative. I really liked this rule. It was something that I agreed with. It was something that made sense. It was something I wanted to incorporate into my life. But I found out that it didn't really fit for teens. In our lives, there are more important things than money. We have different priorities: friends, futures, learning. Hobbies, as I define them, are skill-based activities that you personally find entertaining with an infinite skill progression. Hobbies create meaning and purpose in one's life, something to look forward to, something that makes you unique. They're the main way to get out of the gray zone. As teens, hobbies are more important than ever. We are developing, growing. The choices we make and the knowledge we gain as teens will affect us for the rest of our lives. The hobbies you have as a teen and the resulting knowledge you gain is the foundation for your future. Mark Zuckerberg, Bill Gates, and Steve Jobs had computer-related hobbies as young teens. And look where that got them. Facebook, Microsoft, and Apple are 3 of the top 5 Fortune 500 most profitable countries in the world, not countries, companies in the world today. And Zuckerberg, Gates, and Jobs would never have been able to build them without the knowledge and experience they gained through their teenage hobbies. So I started thinking, what are the most important things in a teenager's life? What does he or she need in order to be enabled to do the best in his life? Since then, I have consolidated my thoughts into 3 rules specifically for teens. It goes like this. Every teen needs one hobby to keep you socially active, one hobby to teach you life skills and knowledge, and one hobby to make you employable. Here's my thinking. Teens need one hobby to stay socially active because teens are proven to be happier when they have friends with common ground. And staying socially engaged throughout your life will give you invaluable skills later as an adult. Having a hobby that provides friends so you have a group of people to fit in with leads to a sense of belonging and happiness. And when teens feel connected, their fluid intelligence is higher. To meet this specification, our friend Joe liked skateboarding with his friends, but there are so many other options. It could be being in a band, playing basketball, or maybe even scuba diving. Any hobby that involves you with others with the same interests and gets you connected with that group of people would satisfy this goal, this rule. The next part of the rule is to have one hobby to learn real-world skills for your future. As teens, we are getting ready for our futures. Having hobbies that build up knowledge and experience for our futures will give us a head start in adulthood. Knowledge gained as a teen will stay with us for our whole lives. For Joe, it was cooking, a hobby that opened a door to a possible future job, but also taught him a valuable life skill. But it also could have been a martial art, gardening, or maybe even public speaking. It will create opportunities for future employment and enable him to, in the future, be a better functioning adult. And finally, one hobby to make you employable. Now this is similar to Rule 2, but a little bit more specific. By being good at something as a teen that is of any value to an employer will mean that you'll never be without a job. Choosing a hobby to satisfy Rule 3 is not setting your career path. It is setting up your adulthood with reliable contingency careers, ones that you enjoy and ones that you're good at. Joe decided to become good at coding, something that he found very interesting to satisfy this rule. But other hobbies could include video editing or writing. As long as they're desirable and stable careers centered around that hobby, it satisfies this rule. It might seem unnecessary for a teenager to start thinking about this so soon, but I say it's never too early to start being prepared for the rest of your life. So my fellow teens, are you a Mo or a Joe? Or more importantly, which do you wish to be? It is clear for me. After creating this rule, I want to live up to it. I want to be a Joe in every sense of the word. It's hard to tell whether or not I have completely lived up to this rule yet, but I try, and I will continue to try. And I hope you teens out there do too. Thank you.
Thank you, Jo, for that great start. Now I might actually have to reconsider my own hobbies. Next, we have Noah, who's going to be speaking on his own opinion on how we can tackle the climate change. Please give Noah a warm welcome.
Man-made climate change has affected our everyday lives in just the past several decades. I know many of you out there would like this issue resolved.
Yeah?
Well, in my opinion, the only way to truly resolve this issue or any other global issue on this scale is if we all collaborate, if we all come together, and if we all accept each other's ideas. Think about the people who invented the airplane, or the car, or the people at NASA who sent astronauts to space for the first time. They had to overcome a lot of challenges. But likely, one of the biggest challenges was people telling them that what they were trying to do was impossible, unsafe, and a million other bad things along those lines. The problem with society today, as it was back then, is that people are not open to change, and that is what is keeping us back in solving this crisis. Hello everyone, my name is Noah, and I'm currently in 7th grade at the Western Academy of Beijing. I'm very passionate when it comes to climate change because, well, everyone's passionate about a lot of things, but people have to choose one. And I would like to take this opportunity to share my opinion and the opinions of others like me. One day, Mom and I were on a group tour of the rice paddies of southern China. Suddenly, she asked me what I wanted to be when I grew up. This wasn't the first time she'd asked me, and this also wasn't the first time that my response had changed. But right then, I had decided to go into the public transportation sector, designing more efficient, reliable, high-capacity, and accessible transportation systems and vehicles to run on them. Mom has always joked about my passion for trains, but right then she was surprisingly serious and has supported me ever since through her words and actions. I'm very grateful for this because I'm someone who is easily let down when other people turn down ideas that I have, even the smallest ones. I'd like you all to think for a second. Is there any time that someone turned down an idea that you had? What was it? How did it make you feel? Now, do you think you've ever turned down an idea that someone else has? What was their idea? In summary, rather than saying, "I don't like this idea," to someone, say, "I don't like this idea because," and
movie, this ping pong diplomacy is indeed a historical event. In 1971, the Chinese government decided to invite the U.S. table tennis team to visit China. Then on April 10, the U.S. delegation and others arrived in Beijing. The U.S. and Chinese table tennis teams held a friendly match and visited the Great Wall. On the same day, U.S. President Nixon issued a statement adopting a series of measures to improve relations between the two countries. At that moment, a game had real-world effects, tearing down cold walls between two countries. This is the historical moment of ping-pong diplomacy, when small ball turned to big ball. I wondered, how can a small little ping-pong ball play a crucial role to make remarkable things happen? Well, I tend to find out the answer in my own sports experience. My parents like ping-pong, especially when we watch Forrest play in a film. He is smart to use the sport as a ticket to get on a train to college. I agree with that, as I am also a sports boy, playing hockey and golf, but most importantly, my sports experience helps me uncover the true flavor of friendship. If life was indeed a box of chocolates, I have tasted the deeper flavors of that chocolate because of sports. Gump has tasted the various kinds of texture and taste of the chocolate in different periods of his life. Every piece of chocolate tastes different than the last, but for me, playing sports is the most delicious kind of chocolate I can think of. My own sports experience has allowed me to maintain friendships between North America and China, proving that sports can help. When I was 4, my family moved to Canada. I didn't know what the world would be like. I didn't know how the communities will cooperate. But all I knew was my interest at watching those teenagers on Canada Day wearing hockey jerseys and parading around the community where I lived. I imagined myself wearing those hockey jerseys and playing hockey on plain ice. When I was in school, I met Torin, who also enjoyed playing hockey and started hockey when he was 3. His dad recommended me that I learn to play hockey as well. I thought that was a great idea, and my mom was interested as well. From that day on, my mom drove me to the local hockey rinks, and some coaches there taught me how to skate. By the time I was really experienced, power skating was fun. It felt really awesome when the cold, frigid air brushed against my skin. After that, I learned how to stick handle. Stick handling is when you use this hockey stick and you dribble the puck around to protect the puck from other opponents. This way, you can score. But guess what? Stick handling was hard. Your hands need to be really flexible. My hands were always tight and rushed, like my dad when I was teaching him. Persevered to wake up and start training at 6 a.m. I want to cooperate better with my fellow buddies. We wanted to know each other better. When we departed from our homes to practice, the sky was dark and gloomy. The air was cold and dim. I felt myself trembling. And by the time practice was over, I came out with my friends. The rosy dawn lit up in the distance. It was beautiful. This is how sports can add luminous nights to my inner heart. A year later, after competitive tryouts, I was selected into BC Kodiaks, my first ever AAA hockey team. The team was progressing quickly, getting more and more stronger players on the ice. But what I really wanted to say was not about their skill and goals, but the friendship and the kindness and the crucial role they take in my life. That's what mattered the most. Many of my good friends were from BC Kodiaks, so let's talk about how they changed my life for the better. Torin is my best friend forever. What I liked about him was his attitude towards hockey, that he always seemed calm, no matter what happens with the score, even if it was serious, like we're about to lose a very important match or something. He taught me that we're not even supposed to care about the score. We're supposed to learn from our mistakes, to learn from the other team, and what they did well, and what we didn't. He also taught me that we need to leave the past behind us and focus on the present and the future. We need to do that because if you think about the bad things that happened before, you have this atrocious feeling in the present and you do bad in the future. Of course, we need to play with stronger teams to get better. Torin only says the bad things, never the good things, to motivate us to train those bad things to get better. He taught me that. Leander was also one of my best friends. What I liked about him was his perseverance towards the game and towards the other team. Wherever the puck went, Leander always tried to get there first and score it in the goal. He taught me that we're not supposed to fear failure. Accept it and keep on going, because if you fear failure, failure will come to you. I made other friends as well and also learned from them. Preston and Connor did not teach as many skills as Torin and Leander, but they're committed to the game. No matter what team it is, they always tried their best and eagerly score goals. When my country moved back to old country China, meanwhile, COVID-19 was raging around the world. I went nuts. I was really scared and didn't do anything for weeks because I never experienced a pandemic before. But when I was used to the mess, I decided I should continue my hockey practices and tournaments. Luckily, there's a hockey rink right next to my compound called Dreamland that has just been constructed. I was selected into a very competitive team called Dreamland Totem. and I met a lot new friends and parents. At first, it felt a bit strange and embarrassing to be in a hockey team in China after when I just came back from Canada. But of course, being in a hockey team in China improved my Chinese a lot. Almost 100% of the kids in Totem accepted me as one of their friends. I think it's not only because I had a huge hockey experience, but also I cooperate with my line, we scored goals together, and adored victory. As you can see in the photo, that is Sam right there. Sam skates like Sonic, but he is as short as the third grader. And you need to know that. We have all of this kind of magic between us, like nothing can stop us from cooperating and scoring goals. As you can see in the photo, Joy is the only girl in the team, but she's the most intelligent player in the team with a nickname called Big Brain. Because of her wise decisions, me and Sam always get shooting opportunities. What a wonderful team. This is what I learned from my own hockey experience and how kids in Canada and kids in China are both different and same in a way that can bring us together. In Canada, it teaches us the importance of commitment and challenging work. It teaches us the importance of thinking about the present and the future rather than dwelling on past mistakes. In China, I learned how to build trust and kindness from them. During the 2022 Winter Olympic Games in Beijing, the U.S. curlers team defeated the Chinese team. And after the game was over, the Chinese team wished their American counterparts good luck during the next round of match and highly praised their performance and gave them 2 sets of Bingduan pin badges as gifts. The American duo displayed the gifts on Twitter on Saturday, saying that they're honored to receive these beautiful Beijing 2022 pin sets in a wonderful display of sportsmanship by our Chinese counterparts this afternoon. And with that, the relationship between the players and the 2 countries became a lot closer. This is another example of how sports can bridge divides between people, even though they're from somewhere else. There's a song attached to this. When you grow up, sports will maintain your inner peace, and peace will find your inner heart. Help you fight frightening, strange, worrying feelings that you have, and to help you new these feelings. And feelings that might be hopeful, sometimes it just carries you along the way. And sometimes you just need to bear it in act. And these actions lead to good things. Loving sports, developing talent, and believing in the power of sports are all a good bridge to people in different nations on this planet. It may even help promote a better understanding for each other, bringing peace to the world of human beings. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, Jeff. That was amazing. Next, we have Amelia, who's going to be talking about her journey as an artist. Please give Amelia a warm welcome.
Hello, does this work? Hello? Does it work? Okay. Hi. Hi, so my name is Amelia, and today I'm going to be talking about the development of an artist. Is it talent or perseverance? Now, what I'm going to show you is this cool trick that I learned, how I went from this to this in a few hours, and how everyone here can do it as well. Is what I would say if I were trying to scam you, but thankfully, I'm not. Today, I'm actually going to be showing the art process that I learned through my journey. And it actually didn't take a few hours, it took a few years. And it looked a bit like this. But the lessons that I learned throughout my journey has helped make me the artist that I am today. And I hope to share these lessons to hopefully inspire someone. So I've divided my speech into 3 sections. Which is how I got through the struggles of social media. So number 1, inspiration. While I was growing up, I loved watching cartoons. I loved everything from their goofy designs to their cool adventures. It was just so fun to be part of their world. And so this led to me creating my own drawings and doodles of my own. As you can see, they're messy, unfinished, but they were mine, and I liked doing them. It was a fun hobby. And as time went on, I kept slowly developing my art, and I discovered digital art. And I gave it a try because it was fun. And as you can tell, my art style is still very undeveloped. There's not a lot of consistency, and they're just fun pieces that I did when I was bored. But as time went on, I discovered not just a digital art community, but also this thing called the art industry. And it was this whole secret world behind the cartoons that I already loved. So not only were cartoons great and fun to watch, but when I watch cartoons, I think of this. Storyboards, concept art, real work put in by real people. And this is what drew me to cartoons now. A great example of this is Studio Ghibli, a Japanese animation studio. And the movies that they make are cute, charming, they have great surface value. But what audiences don't normally see is this. The hours and hard work that people put into the art. And this is what I want to share today. Okay, number 2, competition. So as time went on, I kept experimenting with digital art. But as you can see, there isn't much development happening here. My style kind of stayed the same. I couldn't finish my art pieces. I was feeling unmotivated. And this is probably because I was just drawing for myself. I didn't have anyone to really talk to about my art, so I didn't have any feedback. Thankfully, this changed in 7th grade. I met another art friend, and this is her art. Much more detailed, and her pieces are finished. There's obviously a huge skill gap between me and her, and I wanted to learn about it. We became friends quickly enough because of our similar hobbies, and it went a bit like this. I would draw a disgusting little sketch in my free time, and if I texted to her, she would reply immediately with this. And yeah, there was obviously a lot to learn from her. And so this went back and forth for a while, and over the course of a few months, every time she drew something, I would draw something back. And this was a fun little challenge that I did. Again and again, you can kind of see me finishing my drawings now, coloring it in, finishing the details, until eventually she drew something like this, and I would draw something like this. Now, obviously, I have gotten much better through this time of learning. I went from a simple portrait drawing like this to this in about a year. But it wouldn't have been possible without her pushing me out of my comfort zone. I learned that I needed someone to egg me on in order for me to impress myself and to improve. And this is the importance of having an external factor and to push you to develop. 3, small fish in a big pond. I still remember my first Instagram post. So good, so underdeveloped, so bad. But this is a really good starting point for me. I thought at the time that my art was good enough to share with the public, and I wanted to see feedback from other people online. And soon I discovered some of my favorite artists to this day. I loved their art, and I could not take my eyes off of it. I wanted to learn everything about them. And over the course of another year, I set out to do this. As you can see, my art style slowly went from cringy and weird and sketchy to a much cuter style with brighter colors, and eventually it became edgy and flashy and just more mature. You can see how my art developed to capture more attention. I wanted to make my art flashy so that more people would pay attention to it, and so that I could get a better feel for my art. But as time went on, I couldn't help but focus on the amount of followers that they had. It was so intimidating and daunting. How was I supposed to become that good of an artist to have that big of a crowd? This resulted in me feeling a bit underconfident, and I felt a bit insecure about my own stories. I had all these stories that I wanted to tell, but in the end, they stayed on paper because I didn't think they were good enough for Instagram standards. This influence of social media stunted my growth a bit, and I ended up creating art just for people online. And after a while, I realized that this is not right, and I'm not happy. If I was only creating art for people online, for other people, then what's the point of doing all of it if I don't even like it? I realized from this experience that art is something personal to me, and I can only do it if I really enjoy it. I realized that my art can be messy, unfinished, but as long as I like it, I'm happy, and that's okay. So back to the original question. Does it take talent or perseverance to be a good artist, or to even develop as an artist? The answer I realize is that it's irrelevant, neither. I learned that you have to do what you love and work hard at it in order to achieve something that can impress yourself. And this is the lesson that I learned from my art journey. And I hope that it inspires someone, anyone, to have their own journey. And when it does, I can't wait to hear all about it. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Amelia. Your art is incredible. Next, we have Cindy, who's going to be talking about racial representation in media. Please give Cindy a warm welcome.
When I was 4 years old, there was only ever one thing I wanted to be: a superstar. Why, you ask? Because all I would ever do, all I would ever watch was Hannah Montana. I wanted to literally be her. Blonde hair, blue eyes, funky clothes. My parents were totally supportive of this, of course, except for one slight inconvenience. I'm Asian. Now, one of the things I think I didn't understand as a child was that if I'm born Asian, believe it or not, for the rest of my life, I'll be waking up in the morning Asian. Yeah, I couldn't believe it either. But eventually, I learned to accept the truth that I will never be her, and I soon dropped that phase. For the rest of my childhood, I always felt comfort when I saw an Asian character on screen, from Mulan to London Tipton from The Sweet Life of Zack and Cody. There was no better feeling than seeing somebody that looked like you on screen. However, I could never fully comprehend what it was I was truly seeing because there was never an accurate representation. The problem is, I know it's not just me, but all people of color. Of course, when I was young and still not exposed to media, I lived my life unbeknown to this burden I feel now, this burden that is my race. I remember one of the first times I truly felt out of place. One Halloween when I was 5, I went to school dressed as Aurora. I was so excited about my costume, only to get told by one of my classmates at school that I couldn't be Aurora because I was Asian and I didn't look like her. I was crushed. That was one of the first experiences I had where a feeling of encumbrance dropped on my shoulders because of my race. Definitely not the last. As I grew older and more exposed to media, the burden of being Asian somehow grew heavier. I suddenly knew that I could only be pretty, not the prettiest. My features weren't pleasing unless they were a trend, and the beauty standard globally was to have light skin. And then when it came to culture, I tried to grasp onto any bit of Western culture I could in hopes that it would give me the sense of belonging all my white friends had. Doing this was taxing stuff. I was playing my own character, hoping to fake it till I make it. But eventually, I reached a point where I asked myself, why? Over the years, I realize nowadays we have phones, we have books, we have movies, we have TV. But if you never see somebody that looks like you on screen, you will subconsciously feel like you don't belong there. The lack of representation I had growing up led me to feeling alienated inside my own body. So then I wondered, what is causing the restraint of growth and diversity in mainstream media? Now, one of the most important things people need to understand and to grasp this concept is what racial representation is and why it's crucial in the first place. Not until quite recently have I seen non-white characters portrayed in a non-stereotypical way. For example, this could be from including microaggressions in dialogue, over-exaggerating an accent, or over-exaggerating the features the minority is known to have. Not until quite recently have I seen roles almost accurate. When we see ourselves on screen, or on anything, even if it just comes down to race, it sends a subconscious message to your brain that you belong and that you are valid. What we see informs our perception of reality. We all deserve to believe that we can do and achieve whatever we desire, no matter our identity. Lack of representation shapes negative perceptions and stereotypes, which then drive discrimination. Research has shown that diverse representation can help close gender and race gaps in education and can create inclusive and productive work environments for all learners. It can also create an environment of solidarity where ideas are diverse, perspectives are varied, and everyone feels valued. We need new role models for generations to come. That's why I felt the need to come here and talk to you about this today. Growing up with almost no Asian representation in media, I can't help but wonder how much earlier I would have been able to stop thinking about my race as a burden, or if it would have been a burden at all. For example, take Barack Obama. When Barack Obama became the 44th president of the United States, the possibilities for Black communities suddenly opened up. He became a role model and a symbol of Black excellence and led them to strive for their dreams. Now, imagine if we just had 30 more Barack Obamas from all different races, gender identities, and sexual orientations. The ability it would have and the impact it would have on our society and its ability to thrive. So I say it's time for change. Now, to make change, it's not that hard. Now, with social media, the answer's right in our pockets. Nowadays, the media can be an instrument of change. Its power of communication, interpretation, and storytelling can reflect the views of society and how it's going to move forward. Not only this, but it has the power to awake people and change minds. We just have to let the right people take the wheel moving forward. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Cindy. So those are the first 5 speakers. Now we're going to have intermission. We're a bit early, but the event will start again at 2:30. So please head outside to the link for free food and some student performances. Thank you.
Yeah, sounds tuned. Helicopter. harmonics. This is supposed to be that whistle, but it sounds like air. You know, like it's supposed to be like the high C, like, but then the high C doesn't come through when you're going in the mic. Yeah. Yes.
Pretty good, pretty good.
Yes.
Looking forward to it.
Thank you. Bruh. Bruh, 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 bruh. No.
Do you want to change the beat, the rapping
Yeah.
thing? Okay,
Yeah.
let me do that right now. Original beatboxing?
Yeah.
Did you say beatboxing? Okay. Mia, do you want to check yours? Mine? What is mine? Yeah.
Yeah, that's what it probably sounded like in 4th grade.确实很低频大理。EQ。哦。
你当时使这麦是吗？
嗯。
那你到时候跟那主持人借一下。
好。
现在是平的。
Yeah. It's like harmonic sevenths. Yep, that's the seventh right there.
They call it beatboxing.
Yeah.
In the actual thing, they call it rap.
Yeah.
Seriously?
Yes. Yes.
What's up, sexy people?
Oh my god. Hello there.
Vibrates.
Eric, have you registered the fact of like inhibitions and
You can't do it with the headsets.
Hello? 可以吗? Hello? Okay. Is that Matilda? No? Yeah? Oh. The one singing.
working with microphones? No, I mean like the...
Yeah, so it's going to be passed on. So as soon as who's going through, I think while Mia's going, someone's going to be attaching the microphone.
Okay.
Yeah, and then it should be.
Perfect. Thank you.
Yeah, no worries.
Keep going.
To learn an instrument, it takes time, patience, and perseverance. Then there are different techniques to play an instrument, and there's also playing with other people. Then there's learning music itself, arranging different parts, learning about the melody, composition, and knowing when an instrument is more effective and significant than another. What really allowed me to experiment and learn about this was the space and time the pandemic provided with me during, okay. Hi, I'm Elaz, an 8th grader at the Western Academy of Beijing, and I describe myself as a blueprint of what I will be in the future. Now, the distraction music created has been quite the advantage for me during the pandemic. While my mom was discovering online shopping and receiving the most interesting packages, from L-shaped pillows to scented lamps to discounted packages of 50 soap bars, I was in the basement, sitting in the middle of the room with a fruit bowl and a water bottle on the floor beside me, wearing the same yellow t-shirt and black shorts every single day, and getting into playing and looping several instruments, trying out some different arrangements. Now, with the equipment I had and YouTube, I was able to develop some skills. Now, I don't think COVID has been very enjoyable for any of us. Some people might have checked the news every day or checked for new updates of cases, but I preferred to remain oblivious to that, just for the sake of my own mental health, and the news couldn't reach me at all if I was hunkered down in the basement. When I first started playing, I could barely do a thing. Now, for the bass, I couldn't even play a simple scale. That sounded something like this. For the guitar, I won't play it because I didn't even use a pick and it sounds horrible. Then, every day after every meal, I spent time in the basement. I started developing a sense for the instruments, and they started sounding a bit more pleasant, but not quite as well as I would like them to sound. But after online learning started, I didn't have half the time I did before. I woke up early, had a quick breakfast, and sat in front of a screen all day. I didn't feel well, I felt unhealthy, and I wanted to make a difference and a change. But the problem was, I didn't have the time to. Time. How funny it can be. One moment you're drowning in it, and the next, it's the scarcest thing to come by. Time can be manipulated. It is scientifically proven that time seems slower if you're experiencing and learning new things. And sometimes, it feels like time is really fast for me, as if I'm not learning anything. Now, everything is connected to this one thing, the simple ticking of a clock, and everything, okay. A nice example of this would be my sense of time when I was little in Germany. I confused weekends with holidays. A day would feel like it took forever, just because of the sheer amount of things I did in primary school. I have a list of all the things I did, actually. All right, so first I wake up, get dressed, eat breakfast, brush my teeth, walk to my friend's house, wait for him to get ready, walk with him to school, have my first class, have breakfast and eat a snack, have another class and another, be silly with my friends during them, then be told off by my teacher and be separated, then go to the school, after school place, do homework there, collect bugs, make things out of cardboard, try to build a rocket, go outside. If my friend's mom arrives before mine does, go to his house, look at bugs. I really was obsessed with bugs. Play outside, play in his room, be picked up by my parents, go home, do additional homework if needed, play with my brother, eat dinner, get ready for bed, read books, make jokes, sleep, and repeat. Whew. Now, when the pandemic hit, time froze. We were separated from our daily lives, and this allowed me to find new passions and new interests. It allowed me to... The daily hustle of life wasn't a barrier for me anymore. For those 2 months, we were spared of that hustle, and for those 2 months, it felt like life froze, and it was an opportunity for me to spend time with me and me alone. Boredom is an even more important part of our daily routines. We're in the 21st century, and to be frankly honest, boredom is hard to come by seek out of our technology-consumed lives. The activities that don't require your full attention, that can lead to boredom, enable your brain to switch to autopilot. I have found myself trailing off to the most interesting places and weird and creative places I would or did think of. Many great people come up with solutions not by sitting at a blackboard, but by occupying themselves with something like a hobby, chore, or a simple walk. This has also been quite the excuse for me to push back any important tasks right back to the deadline. It might not be very smart or not practical at all, but I have noticed different results. For example, this talk, I finished the final script last night. Of course, I added ideas throughout the process, but I clean up at the end. All right, so a study by Mihai Csikszentmihalyi, talking about flow when your skill level and the challenge at hand are equal, supports the idea that getting into the zone requires a good challenge and a good environment. This links back to when time froze for me, and that created this environment for me to get into this flow. But back to my personal anecdote. School started, I was thrilled, seeing people, having classes, lunch, yay, it was great. But I really did feel the lack of time I spent with myself. I felt that space I created, where I could let creativity run through fields and forests, had vanished. Out of habit, of course, I continued practicing, but I focused more on bass, so that sounds a bit something like this. Okay. Should I do? Okay, I'll do the guitar. It's not. It's not quite as well, but. Okay, to my last point though, distractions, boredom, and all these things combined can be found in a single word: music. Thank you.
Thank you, Elaz. That was great. Even though it was a bit... Get all the pieces? Even though it was a bit last minute, it was fantastic. Next, we have Mia, who's going to be talking about her own experiences with persistence. Please give her a warm welcome.
Hello. Okay. Ow. Hello. Ambition is a path to success. Persistence is a vehicle you arrive in. People always talk about how important it is to persist, how much of a virtue it is to be able to grit your teeth and keep moving forward. However, I never really listened to these comments, dismissing them as nonsensical lip service, up until I became immersed in the world of music. Hi everyone, my name is Mia, and I'm a 9th grader at the Western Academy of Beijing. Today, I want to share my personal experience of riding the roller coaster that is persistence, and how my experiences with music have shaped me into the person I am today. If persistence is a vehicle to success, then passion is a fuel. Everyone has something that can keep them rambling for hours, something they're willing to bleed for, something that stokes the white-hot flames of devotion inside them. For me, that something was music. Music has been a significant part of my life since I was a toddler. I was 4 when I started learning to play the piano, my first instrument. I was genuinely interested in the keyboard when I started learning. I wanted to develop impressive playing skills and sharpen them to the point of refinement. I practiced because I actually wanted to. I would sit before all those 88 keys, 52 black and 36, 52 white and 36 black. My short legs dangling over the leather stool, studying the inner workings of this massive instrument for hours on end. During my first lesson, I counted all those keys and found that there was not 1, but 2 middle keys, E and F. I thought that middle C should have been in the middle because middle was literally in the name. That was a bit of a disappointment for 4-year-old me. Still, I felt it then, that accelerating spark of embarking on a journey and discovering something new. However, that initial flicker of wonder towards my instrument was quickly stamped out by how tiring practicing was. I started refusing to dedicate any time to the piano, and when my parents forced me to practice, I just sat there, pressed keys, with 1 finger. I was completely drained of passion, and after 2 years of dealing with tedious practices and lack of motivation, I quit. During my time with the piano, I was constantly torn between quitting and persisting. Do I put out the fire I spent so much time nurturing, or continue fanning it, even if I lost the passion I once had? This dilemma would follow me for years to come. I picked up my second instrument when I was 10, the violin. I had too much free time in elementary school, so I decided to join beginner strings out of boredom. This club was loud and chaotic, but I genuinely enjoyed the few months I spent with the violin. In hindsight, it was probably because we only ever covered the basics of violin playing, never learning simple songs like Ode to Joy, and never progressing to advanced or even intermediate levels of violin playing. This was also around the time I picked up the saxophone. My dad likes doing this thing where, whenever he's interested in something, he convinces me that I'm also interested, so we can master this new skill together. Because he wanted to learn the saxophone, he persuaded me to learn this instrument as well. I started taking private lessons on the same day as beginner strings. 10-year-old me ended up having to carry a backpack and 2 heavy instruments on my bike ride to school. This weekly strain on my back was the main reason I quit the violin. I continued learning the saxophone throughout 6th grade, but now that I think about it, I only practiced the day before a performance. The day before a performance, or when I thought my teacher would get mad at me if I didn't. The slides are messed up. Okay, so this is usually what happened when I tried to practice the saxophone. I end up doing everything but practice the saxophone. There was never any internal drive to practice, only external motivators like being part of the middle school development band and middle school jazz band. Jazz band was especially challenging because of the constant sharps and flats. Not to mention the confusing rhythms and annoying eighth notes. Stress was an unsustainable motivator, and I didn't think I would be able to play the pieces even if I did practice. So I never practiced for jazz band. During rehearsals, I would only play the long 4-beat notes in a confused haze while getting lost in the music. Not the good kind of lost. I literally lost my place in the music sheet because I didn't know what everyone else was doing. For a whole year, I did nothing but simply exist and sit there during rehearsals and performances. Teachers and students alike never heard me play. Any burning interest in music I had left was snuffed out without a sound. Now you might be confused. Why would I stay in band if I didn't even play? Well, it was an opportunity to perform pieces I considered complex music, which made me feel better about myself and my saxophone playing abilities. Though it was shallow motivation, it was still motivation and kept me in band. In 7th grade, there was a drastic shift in my life. Okay. I moved to Hong Kong. I decided to stop playing the saxophone and I left it behind during the move. In my new school, I chose to play the trumpet. Because of prior exposure to the instrument in music class. I achieved a higher beginner level and was able to play easier pieces with a small range. However, I felt like there was something lacking. There was a giant, gaping void in my life I could never seem to fill. Slowly, I realized that I missed the saxophone. I missed its rich, vibrant sound, its golden tube, the vibration of the reed. I thought that my passion for the sax was gone forever, but distance brought fondness. I realized that I had taken my instrument for granted all along, and I missed it more than anything. So much so that I lost interest in the trumpet. My parents realized that I was on the verge of abandoning another instrument, so my mom brought my sax to Hong Kong from Beijing. Playing it again felt like reuniting with an old friend, and the slides are messed up again. Let's find, okay, we can't find it. Okay, whatever. Playing it again felt like reuniting with an old friend. It felt right and familiar and warm. At that moment, I realized that things like passion and interest wax and wane with time, but never fade completely. The experimenting was all part of the process of finding myself and growing up. It is important to persist through this process. Oh, I forgot the slides. Okay. My mom used to say in Chinese, 你做一件事情从来不会坚持下去，一直在浅水区，从来不会等到下深水区。 你做一件事情应该坚持下去，不要什么都学，然后什么都学不好。In English, it means you must persist. You stay at the shallow end of the swimming pool, never going deeper than that. But you must persist. Don't learn everything, only to realize you're not skilled at anything. That quote triggered an epiphany in me. Hearing that, I started reflecting on my experiences with music. All these years, curiosity was what drove me to learn new instruments, but my unwillingness to persist always led me to giving up a few months in. I always found new hobbies and skills to learn, never focusing on perfecting one thing, never willing to practice at the cost of tiring myself out. With that, I finally realized the importance of persistence and my issues with it. When I went back to the school bands, I became determined. I wasn't afraid of playing anymore. I wasn't paranoid of making mistakes, and I stopped comparing myself to others. I used to be intimidated by other saxophone players when they were better than me, but now I just feel proud of being able to play as well as I can, even if I'm not a prodigy. After accepting that, I saw my improvement for the very first time. I saw how my sight reading got quicker and more efficient over time. I saw how my rhythm sense is more accurate now. I can hear the tone of my instrument getting better too. Sometimes, you only see the progress you've made when you stop obsessing over the progress you've yet to make. My saxophone teacher, Miss Joyce, told me, when you master an instrument, all the other instruments get easier. And I think I really understand that now. When you hear about all the instruments I've learned, these experiences may seem like failures, examples of laziness or carelessness. But isn't failure just another stepping stone to success? Through trial and error, I finally found my feel. In band, I can see all the people around me improving at rapid rates because of persistence. There were little kids in band, and I watched them grow from squeaking and going insanely off tune to who they are now. Excellent, most importantly, confident players. They improved so fast because they were dedicated, determined, put time into practice every day. They inspire me to practice myself. There's also this girl in middle school jazz band. She reminds me so much of myself in 6th grade. She sits there and doesn't play. Maybe because she's not confident. Maybe because she doesn't know how. Or because she isn't confident in her playing. I always try to help her because I see her potential, even if she doesn't. And I hope this girl and every other person learning an instrument out there realize what I've come to learn over time. You have to be willing to keep trying. Don't think motivation disappears overnight. Don't think you'll find your passion overnight. It takes time. It took me 10 years. But remember to be confident. Don't be afraid of your mistakes and flaws. Persist because you will see a change, and you will improve if you stay determined. When you go home tonight, please practice and remember that the embers of passion will never stop simmering until you actively decide to put them out. Thank you for listening.
Thank you, Mia. I wish I was able to pick up 3 random instruments and play them myself. Next, we have another grade 9 student, Christina, who will be talking about her own views on friendship.
Can everybody hear me? Yes, excellent. All right. First of all, I'm going to be honest. I don't know much about this topic. You might be wondering then, why is she even talking about it? Well, I ask you to bear with me, since what I'm talking about today is the concept of friendship. More specifically, friendship between people. Although my dad suggests that I talk about my friendship with my dog. I don't know what his legs are doing in this photo. Don't ask. To prepare for this talk, I split my ideas into 3 questions. Number 1, how important is friendship? Number 2, how complex is friendship? And number 3, what are the pandemic's impacts on friendship? So a bit of an introduction. Friendship, according to the American Psychological Association, or APA, is a voluntary relationship between 2 or more people that is relatively long-lasting and in which those involved tend to be concerned with meeting the other's needs and interests, as well as satisfying their own desires. So how important is friendship? Studies have shown that having friendships in your teenage and adolescent years leads to having a better mental health and stability in your later life. Take this study led by Dr. Rachel K. Nahr. It followed the same people from ages 15 to 25. For the first 2 years, once a year, they asked the subject to bring their best friend in for an interview. Then, each year, the subjects were given a survey on their self-perceived mental health. At the end of the experiment, 10 years after it had started, the subjects who had strong, communicative, stable friendships showed a decrease in depression and anxiety and an increase in their self-worth. You might wave this off as just teens growing out of their moody phases, which, let's be honest, most of them go through, present company excluded, but there was a pretty strong correlation between the stability of people's friendships and their well-being later in life, with subjects who brought different people to the interview each year, having in general the same levels of anxiety and such as before. But this is hard, isn't it? Frankly, I think I can say for many people that friendships are complicated. If you don't think that, good for you. Anyway, friendships can become especially complicated, dare I use the word turbulent, in times of transition. For example, moving to high school, moving to a new school, or even moving to another continent. As mostly international travelers, I'm sure we can all relate to that. For example, there are the people you consider your friends, but then they do something you don't like and you suddenly hate them. There are the people that think they're your best friend and you're just having like, yeah, definitely. Who are you again? And there are the people that you say you'll always talk to when they leave, and then you never speak to them again. I'm guilty of a few of these, much to my shame. But we don't talk about that. I decided to do a survey recently of grade 9s at WAB to see what they thought of the topic of friendship. Well, that was what it was supposed to be. But in the end, I only ended up getting 6 responses. So I had my sister send around to her college friends. That brought the number of responses up to 22. So a bit better. But it also gave me very varied answers to the question, have you ever had a complicated friendship? For example, I'd get a concerning amount of people that answered with friends with benefits. Which, kids, if you don't know what that is, don't ask, and I won't elaborate. With other people saying things such as toxic and competitive friendships. All of these are quite common. Not the friends with benefits part, I hope, but the toxic and competitive friendships. For example, just as a hypothetical, your friend calls you weird and leaves you crying on the bench of the primary school playground. This would never happen in your older years, since then you would just cry in the bathroom. Anyway, friendships can become especially complicated at the adolescent stage, since people are still trying to figure themselves out and figure out who they feel comfortable with. I've seen many people who see friendship as a lower form of partnership, comparing it to romantic relationships. For example, you'd get people saying, we're just friends. But I think that they are very similar. Of course, when I say that, I'm more talking about close friends, people you've known a long time and you feel a strong connection to. In fact, in my survey, when I asked people what they thought the characteristics of a good friend are, they said things along the lines of loyal, supportive, trustworthy, funny, and honest. These are the characteristics you'd want to find in a good romantic partner, right? With maybe the inclusion of physical attraction in some cases, but we're not talking about that right now. With that being said, I'll ask you this. How different is a strong friendship from a romantic relationship? Of course, from the perspective of adults, it might be a bit different. But keep in mind, I'm looking at this from the perspective of a 9th grader. You know, I think it's funny how quickly people think that the person you're friends with, especially if they're of the gender you're attracted to, is your boyfriend or girlfriend or partner. I mean, it's a bit weird, isn't it? You see someone, usually kids or teens, with their friend, and you think, this is definitely romantic. This is especially strange when you think about what romantic love actually means. According to the APA, again, it is a type of love in which intimacy and passion are prominent features. Some parts of this definition I skipped because I fear I'd be told to cut it out for the young ones, but you know. I'll admit, I think that this definition is fair. But how, as a bystander, can you see from looking at another person's relationship if it's romantic or a friendship? this is sometimes even hard for the person themselves. I mean, if you've never had a romantic relationship before, it's a bit hard to notice the subtleties. Nobody actually goes out and says to their crush, "I like you." Nobody actually does that. Funnily enough, I'm being very hypocritical. In fact, once I was watching something with my parents, and two people made eye contact. You know the type, when there are only two people in the frame, like they're each other's whole world. Ugh. I audibly said, "I sense a potential love interest." Which one is a very strange thing to say, and two is going directly against what I said a few seconds ago. But I guess what I'm actually trying to say is, one, you shouldn't think of friendships as less valuable than romantic relations. They both have their values. Two, you've really no idea what is happening in someone's brain. And three, shows and movies are sometimes quite lazy in portraying romantic relationships. Nowadays, you can't talk about practically anything without the pandemic coming into the question. You could say, "I love this movie." Someone would reply, "Too bad it came out 3 years late because of COVID." Or, "When's the next season coming out?" 2023. But even as I say that, I'm being hypocritical. So I'm going to talk about right now is the pandemic's impacts on friendship. Yeah. I can safely say that I was a mess during quarantine. I was having a terrible time. Yes, I was quarantined with my family, and I'm definitely close to them. So what happened? Look at that. Well, I'm just going to make a wild guess and say this. Friends and family are really not the same. The dynamics are inherently different. Since when you're with your family, there's generally someone who cares for you, but they're also in charge of discipline, which means chores. You'll never find your friend coming into your kitchen, why are there dishes in the sink? Or going into your room, why are there dirty clothes on the floor? Actually, the last one is fair, because why are you showing your friend dirty clothes? But you know. Okay, I think most of us are inherently wired to dislike chores, but nonetheless they're important. But I digress, so back to friendship. With friends, you spend more time talking about things you like, doing things you like, and just relaxing. There's also inherently different topics that you actually talk about. Some things that you talk about with your friends would be awkward to talk about with your parents. This disconnect from others, other than family, led to a lot of people feeling an increase in loneliness and decrease in feelings of friendship. Don't worry, I'm not just making this up on the spot. There was actually a study that investigated this. Nice. It was called Changes in Social Relationships During an Initial Stay-at-Home Phase of the COVID-19 Pandemic, a longitudinal survey study in the US. A mouthful. No doubt, the pandemic was a difficult ordeal for all the people in the world. Some were hit harder than others. In fact, in the study, people who rated their health as low, and women, were more affected by the pandemic, with people with low-rated health feeling a decrease in emotional support, and women feeling more loneliness on average than men. But the pandemic wasn't all doom and gloom. In fact, this study shows that most people felt an increase in emotional and instrumental support. For those of you who don't know what instrumental support means, which is nothing to be embarrassed about, I didn't even know before I started talking about this, it means physical help, such as things such as chores, and like groceries. We've probably all heard the stories, some young adults helping old people with their shopping. Well, maybe just at the beginning of the pandemic, when it was less overwhelming. With that being said, this study was done in May 2020 compared to 2018. I think that the situation has changed since then, and with the fear of sounding melodramatic, I think that we will never be the same as before, and that our relationships will show that. I'm not here to preach to you. Yes, friendship is important, yes, it's complicated, and yes, the pandemic is, well, safe to say, terrible. All I'm here to do is talk about a topic that I found interesting. If you take something from that, I'm happy. Maybe you'll realize that you've been neglecting your friendships. And hey, we all make mistakes. I'm not trying to make one of those wake-up calls. Frankly, we have enough of those already. With everything that is happening in the world, I just think that we all need to lean on each other a bit. Even though I kind of dragged romantic relationships through the mud a few minutes ago, if your partner is your best friend, then they count as both. They get a pass in my book. I'm joking, of course. Anyway, given the horrors we've been subjected to the last few years, I think we all deserve a shoulder to cry on. So I'll leave you with this one reminder. Talk to that friend. Thank you.
Thank you, Christina. And to answer your question, yes, I do think friendships are worth the struggle. Next, we're going to be having a grade 8 student named Aiden who's going to be talking about coding.
All right. Hello, is this working? Hello? Oh. Hello? Yeah, this doesn't seem to be working. Oh, I see. All right. Coding, the mysterious force that drives computers. But is it really that mysterious? Hello, I am Aiden, an 8th grade student in Western Academy of Beijing that enjoys coding. I'm here today to bring you a presentation regarding what coding is, why you should code, and how to learn to code. So, regarding this, let me just first tell you a story. So in January this year, I was doing some coding questions during transition time. A student comes up to me and asks this question. Oh, so you're doing real coding? Of course, I reply yes. He then says that is cool before walking off to class. I also walk off to class a few minutes later, still confused as to why he has to ask this question in the first place. And after a bit of thought, I decided to make this TED Talk about this. From this, it's quite obvious that many students are not exactly very clear about what coding is. They have a variety of beliefs about it, ranging from the purely anecdotal, such as how it's cool, to the blatantly wrong, such as how coding is only used for hacking. Modern media only further reinforces this fact. For example, in The Matrix Resurrections, the hacker, Sequoia, literally just looks at some green text, presses a few buttons, and then miraculously understands what's going on. In reality, of course, it's different. Coding may be perceived as cool by many people, me included, but it's often quite boring. Coding isn't only used for hacking. As previously mentioned, it's used everywhere in computers. So, now with that misconception out of the way, what exactly is coding? Well, coding is essentially telling the computer what to do using a series of ironclad rules. For example, you can't just tell the computer, oh, tell me the total of these two numbers I give you. You have to tell it, input these two numbers, add them together, and then output the results. For example, in this program, although it may look scary, it essentially just includes some functions or words for the computer that it needs, inputs two variables, and then outputs their total. Of course, not everything is perfect. Often, after you finish writing your program, and you then run it, and then the system starts breaking down again. It starts yelling at you about things like, oh, syntax error, something, something, something is not a legitimate function, etc., etc., etc. Needless to say, try to make sure that you're writing the proper programs, and try not to do that. So, why should you code? Well, I think we should split this mainly into two parts: competitive programming and applicative programming. Competitive programming is where you write short programs using a bunch of specialized algorithms, or essentially programs, to solve certain questions in competitions. Then you have applicative programming, which is essentially creating games, creating apps, creating functions. For competitive programming, you can learn problem-solving skills, and you can also learn some actually quite useful algorithms. For example, you can learn how to find a path throughout a 2D map. In comparison, for applicative programming, you learn perseverance, as making games and applications often takes weeks. And you can also share them with your friends. Great fun. So enough of the boring stuff. Let's explain a game I made. So this was a game I made in 2021. Hold it. Can somebody play the video? Hello?
So this was a game I made in early 2021 with around 1 or 2 months of work. I used a coding language, essentially a computer-readable program called C++, with an extra library or a set of words for the computer called SFML. Essentially, this allows you to create these things called sprites. They're objects that you can move around, stick an image on, and rotate. So everything that you can see on screen that moves is a sprite. The triangles are sprites which have a red triangle image stuck onto them. The blue square, similar. But all of them are moved every 60th of a second in order, and this allows them to look like they are moving in fluidly, though of course it's only an illusion. And the red triangles follow a predetermined path. The blue square is controlled by the player. I maybe tried a bit too hard while doing this. Yeah, great fun, as I just said. So, how do you learn competitive programming? It's pretty simple, as once again you're preparing for competitions. There's not much extra stuff you can do. You learn a program. In this case, I'm using C++ as an example because I learned it. You set up a programming system. I recommend using tutorials online for this. You enroll in some form of course, and you enter competitions. There are some links that might be a bit unclear. But essentially, there are 3 main competitions: the CSP, USACO, and ACSL. The CSP is a Chinese competition. The USACO and ACSL are English competitions. Essentially, all of them are relatively similar, though the problems they give you, just like the problems in various different math competitions, may be slightly different. For applicative programming, everything is a lot freer, because once again, you're making your own games and applications, not like following some highly structured competition. The 2 examples I'm using here are JavaScript and C++. I've learned both of these programming languages. For JavaScript, Khan Academy actually has a system that runs it. So essentially, all you need to do is go to Khan Academy, create an account if you haven't already. I'm assuming most of you have, though. And then they have some pretty in-detail courses for how to do JavaScript. After that, all you need to do is create a new program and start programming. For C++, you can use the previously mentioned SFML. Essentially, you download the extra library on their website, and you start programming. Though this may be harder because their tutorials aren't that detailed. All right. Anyways, if you have spare time, maybe try learning coding, and thank you for listening. This was hard.
Thank you, Aiden. I'm sure we're all in awe of your coding ability. I'm not sure many people in this room would be able to do what you're able to do. Next, we have Jeremy from grade 9, who will be talking about donut economics. Please give him a warm welcome.
It is so simplistic that it's been thrown around as a buzzword by governments and corporations around the world to seem eco-friendly. One notorious example is plastic recycling. This is not to say that plastic recycling is bad, but it has been exploited, particularly by multinational corporations, as a method to cover up their environmentally damaging actions. Let's look at the case of Nestle. In 2008, they claimed in a full-page newspaper ad that bottled water is the most environmentally responsible consumer product in the world. Nestle reasoned that their bottles use more recycled plastic, but it's important to remember that just because something is more recyclable, that doesn't make it greener. The fundamental issue with recycling is that it incentivizes us to keep consuming. Less than 10% of plastic ever produced has been recycled. Or what about the case of Coca-Cola and the introduction of Coke Life in 2013? Ah yes, a recyclable, single-use plastic bottle with a green label and 10 teaspoons of sugar. So healthy, so natural, so sustainable. An annual brand audit by an NGO found that Coca-Cola has been the world's top polluter for the 4th year in a row. But yes, we strive for a world without waste. And we shouldn't forget the 2021 Reuters investigation, which revealed that corporate are sending their plastic to waste to burn as fuel for cement production. These and other corporations have marketed their products in a way that removes the guilt from consumers by presenting a facade of green thinking that distracts from the complex realities of the problem. But back to donuts. There is one donut that I love, and that Oxford economist, Kate Raworth calls the only donut that is good for you. Now you may be thinking, how does this sugary sweet have anything to do with economics? The donut economic model visualizes what humanity needs to achieve this century. The space in the donut's hole are our shortfalls. In other words, what we are currently failing to accomplish. The space outside the donut are our ecological ceilings. In other words, our planet's boundaries that we should not exceed. Our safe space is the donut. This is where we thrive in an economy that provides education, healthcare, housing, water, food, and energy for all. This is where we're guaranteed a living wage, decent work, gender equality, a political voice, peace, and social justice. But this is also an economy where we aggressively tackle and mitigate the impacts of the climate crisis, eliminating air and chemical pollution while minimizing biodiversity loss. So following this model, how are we doing? Not so well. The red shading indicates our current shortfalls and overshoots. And beyond this single diagram, a recent study by a group of ecological economists concluded that no country is living in the donut. We've got some work to do. But what does the actual application of the donut look like? It's important to remember that the donut is a model that can and should fit in the context of a local community. Organizations, companies, governments, everyone can do their part to move closer into the global donut. But the seeds of collective action must grow from the bottom up to pressure those in power to change. Together, we can overcome the challenges that building this new economic vision will take. From resistance to change by the political establishment or these top 0.1% to a practical inability to implement localized solutions. But even on a micro school level, the donut can still be applied. Let's go back to recycling. Half a year ago, we started a local precious plastic group at our school. Our mission is to close the plastic waste gap by creating upcycled products from 100% community plastic waste, implementing a more efficient recycling program, and educating our community about plastic recycling opportunities. We sold all these products back to our community. With the money raised, we are purchasing new equipment that will expand our production capacity. Not only did we create a circular loop, but we were also bringing our school closer into the donut by eliminating plastic waste and pollution. This project utilizes the equipment available at our school to raise awareness about plastic pollution, but more importantly, hopes to inspire our community and beyond to eliminate single-use plastic. Another example of the donut in action is a new scheme that I worked on as treasurer of our student council. Over the years, we had accumulated a healthy surplus, but we hadn't really spent much of that money. There are over 50 student-led service projects at our school, so we came up with an initiative called Loans for Impact, whereby the student council provides interest-free loans to student groups for their projects and events. A key part of the donut is creating an economy that is regenerative and distributive. Loans for Impact redistributes money back to our school community, but it could also multiply further by allowing clubs to expand their fundraising efforts. This scheme has the potential to provide student groups with the financial support they need to leave an impact and invest in our wider communities. But I think we, as a school, need to do better. We cannot overshoot our ecological ceilings. We should electrify our bus fleet. We should establish a permaculture garden and integrate its use into our curriculum. We should expand the scope of our existing greenhouse. Let's ensure that the electricity we purchase comes from renewable resources and close the food waste gap by composting to then grow our own food. Let's comprehensively educate all members of our community to become not only socially responsible consumers, but advocates for action and politically aware citizens. Let's truly provide students with the tools to inspire change, real grassroots change, at our school and beyond. Implementing policies that fit this donut framework means becoming a model for other organizations and opens up opportunities for us to share our knowledge on a global stage on how to build a genuinely sustainable future. We live in a world where the richest 1% own 43% of global wealth, and where the richest 10% have been responsible for 52% of cumulative carbon emissions in the past 30 years. Yet, almost 10% of the global population still live in extreme poverty, and 97 million people were pushed into poverty because of COVID-19. It's time to move beyond the endless pursuit of rapid and unequal growth. It's time to create a regenerative, just, and equitable economy. It's time for humanity to crunch past the endless layers of sugar and get into the dough of the donut. Thank you.
What a strong finish. Thank you, Jeremy. So this brings us to the end of our event. Could we please get another round of applause for our amazing speakers? And another for the IT and everyone taking photos and everyone behind the scenes. So this marks the end. Thank you everyone for coming, and we hope to see you next year.
Thank you to you too.
Thank you everyone.